Cycling for me has never been about the bikes. They've only ever been the prerequisite tool. I do not see just a bike race, I see riders on heroic journeys and warriors doing battle. At one point, cycling was the most popular sport in Europe because newspapers told magnificent tales about epic races and crafted the great champions into legends. But with the advent of television, cycling lost some of its mystique, and that golden age of journalism and narration has perished. So now let us try to return some romance to the beautiful sport. Let us praise and give glory to phenomenal performances to be remembered for decades to come. Let us dwell on the moments that inspire and move us. Let us chronicle the rise and fall of heroes. Let us chart these life-changing journeys, these cycling odysseys. All right, welcome back to another episode of Cycling Odysseys. I'm your host, Patrick Santino. Today, we are recapping what I thought was an important highlight of the season, which was the Val di Sole cross. It was pretty awesome. I give it pretty full treatment here. It really this is one of those that morphed into a life of its own. I really started going for it, having fun with it. It's kind of like it could have been two separate things, but I think it's better as one. And then, yeah, I was glad that I went long on this one. Lots of times when I go long, I'm upset because it's more work. But this one, I was very glad that it went long. I thought this one turned out very well. It might be a stretch, but whatever. And yeah, it was fun. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. But I had fun writing this one up and even editing it too, which isn't always fun. But yeah, here we go. Women's Cross Catch-Up Part 2, the case for Winter Olympics cyclocross. The proper mountains, the Italian Alps, an unorthodox location for cyclocross, were covered with snow, but the afternoon sun was shining and keeping all decently warm. Save the start and finish straightaway, the course was entirely snow. Many of us have seen crosses take place on flea farts or cute thin blankets of flaky frost. Once in a blue moon, a January or February cross will have some ice or a solid couple of inches of slushy snow that is mostly grooved out mud by the race's end. But this was the first course most of us had seen where no trench through the snow could be dug down into a muddy core. The Cyclocross World Cup had rolled into the Italian ski resort of Val di Sole. This was the showcase to plead cyclocross's case to the Winter Olympic Committee. Of course, cyclocross is and always has been a winter sport. And perhaps you watched the Tokyo Olympics this year and scratched your head at all the obscurest of sports that made the cut for the Summer Olympics. For me, they were rock climbing and skateboarding. It is one issue in itself why some sports were let into the Olympics to begin with, for it increases the amount of medals available and somewhat decreases the prestige of winning ones that have been chased and coveted for more than a century. And yet, the letting in of these minor sports prompts a bigger issue. If these sports that have lesser global appeal and less rigorous feats of athleticism are allowed in, then how are sports with top specimen athletes and decent global appeal like cyclocross or even cross-country running not allowed into the Winter Olympics? Yes, it has been a bone of contention for decades by now with everyone in the cyclocross world. But the Winter Olympic Committee has been restrictingly stringent on at least one rule throughout its history. Only sports that must take place on snow or ice can be accepted into the Winter Olympic program. Ski jumping? Check, of course. This is a prestigious skill. Biathlon? Check, easily. Just watch where you point that rifle. Snowboard a halfpipe? Check. You fit the criteria, and we need something more jazzy, mildly artistic, and simultaneously acrobatic and clickbaity to complement indoor figure skating. Skeleton? An author's note. It's like luge with the one-man sled, but this is the one that's head/face first. Well, some of you are guaranteed to get seriously hurt doing this, and we have no idea why any of your parents let you start this sport. In fact, we don't know why this sport was ever invented, but of course, you check yourself a spot. Moguls skiing? You guys could go faster if there were no bumps, but sure, we're begging for more sports, so check. Curling? Check 1000%. Talk about the pastime, as in pass the time, of the Winter Olympics. Though it is only a glorified variant of shuffleboard, it's shuffleboard on ice. Cyclocross? Oh no. No. So what if the bulk of your season is in November, December, and January? So what if your world championships always take place in the dead of winter? Surely you do not fit the definition. For your sport also competes in the steamy hot September North American Midwest. I'm sorry, but you clearly do not make the cut. All this is pure jesting. I enjoy watching many of the sports I have just called out, but the best jokes have some truth in them. Jesting aside, this day at Val di Sole, the collective cyclocross discipline threw down the gauntlet and told the Winter Olympic Committee, "You can ignore us no longer. We challenge you to amend your winter sports definition from all sports competitions must take place on snow or ice to the winter sports competitions must be able to take place on snow or ice. We have top athletes, we have an international following, and we can do this sport on any terrain, even on the snowy turf that is your desire." Truly, the snow was a constant technical challenge for all, but the course mostly resembled a proper cyclocross. The majority of it rideable enough with all sorts of snowy ruts, wobbly descents that harken back to the Sand Bowl of Zonhoven, tripoding legs out in sketchy turns, and of course there were hefty sums of dismounts and running with shouldered bikes. To not be entirely biased for this experiment though, it could be said that despite the fact that it was clearly a cyclocross, it still looked somewhat out of place. What person in the history of mountain towns and ski resorts has ever said, "Oh, look at all this fresh pow. I have a great desire to get out there on my cyclocross bike"? Surely some have eagerly broken out the fat tire and their lobster gloves, and some may have even contemplated the mountain bike, seeing as ski villages and mountain towns are the very heart of that discipline's domain. But I do not think any resident ever itched to ride their cyclocross bike across such snow. That is, until this day. It cannot be said the riders this day were literal trailblazers, for the course was entirely constructed and barriered off, and pre-race scouting of lines and formations of grooves had already happened. But it could be said at least that they metaphorically trailblazed further than the cyclocross has ever been before. It was a new frontier for a sport that can take place anywhere. And the women this day put on a thriller of a show for the Winter Olympic Committee and the cyclocross world. The lights flashed green and off the women rode. Yet another 19-year-old rising star, Fem Van Empel of the Paul Salzen Bingo team, immediately went out to the front. The world champion Lucinda Brand and the whole Belwaz Trek Lions team were strategically sitting out this weekend of racing. But in Brand's absence, Jumbo-Visma's Marianne Vos the Goat filled the void as she remade her cyclocross debut for the season. Vos followed behind the young Van Empel, but so technical was the course, for all it was not a question if they would fall and slide out, it was only a question of when. And then, on the second lap of the race, for Marianne Vos the Goat, disaster struck. Some sort of dropped icy chain that took over half a minute to refasten. Van Empel's lead had already been some dozen seconds. Her lead skyrocketed from the Vos mechanical. While Vos attempted to fix the chain with frozen fingers, Paul Salzen's ever-consistent Denise Betsema passed her along with the champion of Canada, Maglia Rochette, of the Specialized Feedback Sports team, both in pursuit of young Van Empel ahead. Vos sank to about 6th place because of the mechanical, and by the end of that second lap, she was down 55 seconds to Van Empel with only 3 laps left. Then, the race seemed to settle in a bit. The pecking order was established. The entertainment came from watching the riders negotiate the unique course while also constantly counting ourselves to see if the time gaps were changing. Van Empel was still far out front solo. Rochette in third clawed her way back to within a stone's throw of Betsema in second, but she quite simply could never close the gap. Twice she came within a bike length of Betsema, but then handling mistakes ripped open the gap again. All the riders' handling slowly diminished as they fatigued and the course was chewed up even further. They had to take sections more gingerly. They had to put a foot down in the turns. It was still not easy to nail the snowdrifts behind, and the legs were screaming on the running sections. One peculiar feature of the course was the steepest hill of all. As per usual, a camera was fixed to the top of it to capture a frontal view of the riders approaching, dismounting, and running up the climb. And as per usual in cyclocross and all of cycling, the camera did not have the depth perception of two-eyed human beings. So the severity of the steepness, as per usual, was somewhat lost on us. But what was particularly unusual about this snowcross was that the white blanket of thick snow completely threw off all sense of elevation. No contour or steep pitch in the landscape could be picked out whatsoever. It was not until the riders themselves dismounted for the run and so exerted themselves that we were finally given the impression of just how steep a climb it was. But that massive climb was taking its toll on all. And finally, on the fourth and penultimate lap, the Canadian Maglia Rochette caught Denise Betsema for second place. And still, Van Empel was nowhere in sight. In fact, though Rochette had finally moved into second, the chasers behind had a better chance to catch her than she did of catching Van Empel ahead. Yes, on that massive climb, on the penultimate lap, a regrouping of chasers was forming. And one of those chasers was the GOAT, Marianne Vos, the Cannibal. Yes, indeed, Vos's Cannibal nickname truly pays homage to Eddie Merckx, the greatest of all time in men's cycling. It is only fitting that the GOAT of women's cycling should have a similar nickname. And how did this Cannibal nickname come about? It came from Merckx's insane drive and ability to not only win every race he ever could, but dominate them as well. It mattered not if the race was a high mountain stage of the Tour de France, a prestigious spring classic, or even a local criterium tune-up. If Merckx saw the opportunity, he ate up the road and pulverized the competition. And Marianne Vos, in a similar fashion, has been devouring the competition in races on the women's side for more than a dozen years. She won her first elite cyclocross world title all the way back in 2006. And yet still in December in 2021, at the age of 34, she seems eternal and hungry for more wins. Yes, from being a minute down halfway through the race, Marianne Vos the GOAT had clawed her way back to Rochette and Betsema and crossed the finish line to take the bell lap only 20 seconds behind the young Fem Van Empel up front. Van Empel, almost half the age of Marianne Vos, but the same age as when Vos rose to prominence, was now laboring. On other courses or on other days, perhaps to hold such a lead to the finish would have been a reasonable hope. But Fem Van Empel was being chased down by Marianne Vos the Cannibal, the eternal GOAT of women's cycling, and she had the bit between her teeth. Van Empel was a carrot on a stick, prey to be caught and devoured. But still, the course was an adversary to all. Vos, though she looked the best on that final lap, by no means rode it all perfectly. She passed a fading Betsema. She hawked down Rochette. But on the most notorious snowdrift trench and run-up, she entirely fell over and lost momentum. And yet, she was undeterred. She was the Cannibal. She was the GOAT. To such a great champion, a minor fall such as that mattered little, while victory was still in her crosshairs. Bravely, young Van Empel was riding out front, but her lead to Marianne Vos the GOAT was evaporating, down to only a dozen seconds by the bottom of the massive hill run-up. Fem Van Empel traversed up and down that hill as cleanly as possible, but with tremendous fatigue and perhaps too much caution. The descent was even more tricky and awkward than the run-up. Fem Van Empel cautiously had her inside leg out, but she was actually seated on the top tube instead of the seat to take part of that descent down. While behind, it could not quite be said that Marianne Vos looked graceful, but she was faster, especially on the descent from the seat instead of the top tube. All could see the gap narrowing with their own eyes. After that massive hill, it was mostly straight drag strip power sections left, completely to the liking of the Cannibal chasing down another competitor. Vos then took the set of barriers much quicker, made it onto an arching wooden bridge that skiers use to slow their speed, and there was young Fem Van Empel right in front of her. Marianne Vos, from the jaws of massive mechanical defeat, had brought this snowcross back together in the 51st minute of racing with less than a quarter lap left to go. But it was only a quarter lap left to go. Fem Van Empel had to finish this out. The cards were stacked against her, but who knew what could happen? And even if she could tell how this was going to end, still, she needed to try on, even in assured defeat, for so close was she to victory. Vos was on her wheel, but with such a technical course, perhaps she could not allow Vos to pass. Perhaps, if Van Empel could lead around that final turn so close to the finish line, she could then win the sprint from the front. They took the final switchbacks in a minor hill in this manner. The very last obstacle of the course were two right turns within 30 meters of each other on a bump or lip of a hill. The first came at the top of a few meters high snowy bank. Van Empel, still in front, could ride up the ramp, but she went on a bit of an outside line to maintain upright balance on leveler ground, to turn and approach the next right turn that went back down the ramp. Meanwhile, the cannibal Marianne Vos seized her last chance. She took the tightest of inside lines. She then rode the lip of the hills off camber, while Van Empel was on more even ground on the outside line. Daringly riding the unsteady off camber, Marianne Vos the goat powered past Van Empel to take the lead in a tighter right-hand turn. But Vos's line was too tight. Her right shoulder brutally smashed against an unforgiving wooden stake holding up the course's barrier. This caused Vos's biggest wipeout of the race, but Van Empel was so close on her wheel that she was tangled up in Vos's crash. With only another 30 meters left to the last left turn of the course and the short finishing straight, Van Empel fully waited for Vos to get up and clear out of the way instead of dismounting herself to go around. And Fem Van Empel made the right choice, staying mounted on her bike. Vos had lost all momentum. By the time she was remounted, Van Empel had motored across the last stretch of snow, rounded the left turn, and was sprinting away down the final straightaway to victory. So was ended the women's showcase for Winter Olympic glory. The course was a spectacle to be praised in itself, but as always, it was the riders that made the race. Young Van Empel audaciously riding out front, making her name in the sport. The GOAT of women's cycling, Marianne Vos, heroically chasing her down after a long mechanical mishap. Full credit to Van Empel. She lit up the race and fully earned the victory. But Marianne Vos's chase for those last two laps is why she is the cannibal and the GOAT, even when final victory eludes her. After such a race, with so much young talent still around and no signs of eternal Marianne Vos aging, Winter Olympic Committee, what say you? The case has been made. Can the 2026 curling action be interrupted for but 2 hours? To watch some of the fittest athletes and best bike handlers in the world duel in white snows such as these for a Winter Olympic cyclocross gold medal. All right, that was a great race. Great race. Historic course. Groundbreaking course, actually, more so. But, yeah, Marianne Vos, she's sweet. Of the younger riders, Van Empel was becoming my favorite of them because of this day. Yeah, that was just a wild race. They didn't have the clock in the middle of it, and I didn't have like a watch going or find like a good time to count. But I mean, yeah, it was all of a sudden, oh, Marianne Vos is back in this. This is crazy. This is wild. And then yeah, that snow hill was you really couldn't see it until they hit it. I mean, it was weird. But yeah, cool course. To all the sports. All right, sorry, Winter Olympics. I was bad mouthing you. Maybe it's because I'm like not super jazzed about the Beijing Olympics coming up for some reason. And I think it's because I just don't like the time zone from Far East Asia to America. It's just a crappy time zone. And that's been the case for the past 3 Olympics. It's like, come on, what were these people thinking, picking such sites? And they don't allow cyclocross in the Winter Olympics. This is crazy. That is the thing. I picked on the other sports because it's like, well, cyclocross deserves to be in over some of these. Like biathlon, that one was cool. I don't really know why I picked on that one. Biathlon's really, really cool. And then most of the ones I said, curling. I like curling a lot, but I mean, it's It can be incorporated in jokes. We'll put it that way. And then ski jumping is a good sport, of course. Primus Roglic, obviously, a great sport. Mogul skiing, yeah, I don't really get the point of that one. That was my own joke. Like, you could just go faster downhill. What do we need these for? I guess it's like hurdles. It's like the hurdles of the Winter Olympics. I don't know. Oh, skeleton. That one, like, I'll definitely watch that. But I mean, that stuff's crazy. And that was me speaking. Like, what kind of parents let their kids start this sport? This is just insane. But yeah, I don't know. That's probably enough. This is already a long one. Next part coming out soon. Actually, still have to finish editing that one. But anyways, it's coming out soon, and then the preview's got to be coming out soon. Maybe I'll have another episode or so. We got to see. The week is still in flux because I have so much going on. But anyways, I will do a men and women's previews each. And then, obviously, they'll both get recaps. But we'll see what else I can commit to. I'm not going to commit to anything else. All right. So with that, thanks for listening, everybody. Follow me on Twitter, Cycling Odysseys. Find the blog post, cyclingodysseys.com. Subscribe to the show. Leave 5-star reviews, awesome comments. And thank you for listening. Vive le cyclisme.